Being an entrepreneur, you can experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows all within the same day. All you can do is laugh in these situations. So it's no big secret, 2025 for trucking was difficult. Difficult's an easy way of saying it. For us, we lost money this year. You know, we didn't lose as much as some other companies, and there were plenty of companies that went out of business, but we were not cash flow positive at the end of the year. We had to pull some equity out of some other things to keep everything rolling. It sucks, but what can we do about it? You know, there's scream and cry all you want, but that's not going to pay the bills, so let's figure something out. So we're going to go back to our roots. Our roots were in hoppers, belts, bulk. So let's think about that. I know I can get a lot of hopper work around here in the area. And we also know that from a lot of the people within the industry, they tell young guys not to get into it because of all the time away from their family and not getting paid for all their time sitting and waiting because you get paid by the mile. So how can we fix all of these issues, my issues, plus the issues of getting new drivers into the industry at one time? And I've come up with something that might work. Local, hourly paid hopper and belt work, bulk work. Through this whole process that we're going to have a little shift in our equipment. Instead of buying brand new equipment and ordering it like this truck, I'm gonna buy 3 to 4 year old day cabs, just 2 axles, and I will order brand new hoppers. But between the day cab and the hopper, we should be able to get 31 ton of product total, or 62,000 pounds within the box. So if we take that $24 per ton and we times that by 31, and we take the 45 cents per bushel, please hold. Okay, we're back. So if we take that $24 per ton, we times it by 31 ton, that's going to give us 24 times 31, $744 right there on the front haul. And we're going to take 62,000 pounds, because that's what we can get in the box. We'll divide it by 60, which is kind of the standard test weight of soybeans. So that'll be 1,033 bushel, times that by 0.45. 45 cents a bushel, we're going to get $465 on the return. So add that to the 744. So that's a gross revenue per day on this truck of $1,209 on 435 miles, which puts you at $1.77 or $2.77 per mile round trip every day on 435 miles. Pretty respectable, actually. So let's work this problem. We know that we're getting $1,209, my handwriting sucks, by the way, per day in gross money. So if we take this, we're going to take that $2,009. Now we're gonna take 435 miles. We're going to assume that this truck, this day cab, we're gonna spec it a little bit for, you know, fuel economy. We're gonna assume we get an average of 6 miles per gallon. So that's 72.5 gallons per day. And then we're going to go ahead, we're going to times that, we're going to use $3.50 for fuel just because it's easy. Well, that's a little higher than we are now, but it kind of fluctuates, it seems, the last bit. So that's $253.75 of fuel cost going out. Now, I know if you take a brand new hopper at $80,000 because I just got quotes on triaxle Timpties. They came in the least at $80,000. Let's put that on a rate calculator. That's a mortgage calculator, but it shouldn't matter because they're all kind of the same. No, let's do a car one. Car calculator. Car payment calculator. Auto loan calculator. So we're going to take your $80,000. Now on the trailer, I will do a 60-month term, interest rate of 8% right now. We're gonna do 0 down payment. Once you buy enough trailers, you can buy them without putting any money down. We can take the sales tax off because it's actually in the FET Pro rate, and we can take the title off because same thing there on the Pro rate. Calculate. So we're going to come to a monthly payment on that hopper of $1,622 per month for a brand new hopper. Triaxle. It's kind of a loaded up one. You know, we're running super singles, but 2 rows of 13 lights, disc brakes. It's going to be a nice trailer. And let's figure out what the truck's going to be. So I've been looking online and getting a general idea of trucks that are within kind of that day cab price range of 3 to 4 years old. We're looking to spend up to $60,000 on a day cab. That should get me something with low enough miles that I can run it for 2 to 3 years, putting 120,000 miles on it a year, and then turn around and potentially resell it to farmers within the area and get half my money back, potentially. We'll see how it all works. But if we take this auto payment calculator, we do the same thing. We're going to do $60,000, but we're going to do it for 36 months because I want it paid off when I'm done with it. I don't want to stretch the payment way out and then when I'm ready to sell it, have to worry about liens and stuff like that. So I'm going to shrink that payment term down to what I think will be the life expectancy of that truck. So we'll calculate that out, and we're going to have a payment on the truck of $1,880 per month on the truck. So for simplicity's sake, we will go ahead and take the $1,880, that's the truck payment. We're going to add the $1,622, the trailer payment. So that's your total equipment payment. We're going to times that bad boy by 12, so that's 12 months, and then we're going to divide that by 52. So that's going to be $808 per week for our equipment. Now, we've got some other stuff that we're going to have to worry about. We've got office staff and overhead, because I got back office staff, overhead, e-logs, all those things. We figured it out in-house that it comes out to about $270 per week per truck. Now, as we add more trucks, that will go down unless we have to add more additional staff in the office. So being able to have a larger fleet enables you to get office staff and potentially more office staff to help you do what you need to do and make it reasonable. Now, if you only have one truck and you've got full-time office staff, it's not going to work. But if you have 20 trucks, 30 trucks, 40 trucks, there's a difference to be had. So we got our truck payment, we got our trailer payment, we got our back office staff that we've accounted for. Now we're going to take insurance. We're going to do $200. So if we take our 8 cents per mile, average insurance cost by 2,500 miles, that's going to come up to $200 a week in insurance as well. Now we're going to also do authority and permitting. You figure your prorate plates plus your heavy road use tax. For simplicity, we're just going to put that at 100. It's probably not 100, because that'd be $5,200 a year for that. It's probably a little on the high side, but these trucks will also be running overweight loads, so we have to also account for annual overweight permits. So $100 per week works pretty good. And then driver supplies for the week, put in $100 a week there, windshield washer fluid, etc. Now that brings us to a total weekly cost, flat weekly rate. So this is the non-variable side of the equation. This is what you pay irregardless whether the truck's moving or not, of $1,455 per week. That's a flat rate in this scenario. So if we take that and we divide that by 5, then that's going to give you $291 per day flat rate fixed cost to operate a used but late model day cab, a brand new tri-axle trailer, and have some back office staff. Now there's other stuff that has to be accounted for. Let's say fuel. So if we work that math out for fuel, we do 2,500 miles a week. We do it at 6 miles per gallon, and at $3.50 a gallon, that's going to be $1,428 in fuel each week. $1,458 in fuel. Tire fund, we're going to take 2,500 miles times 6.5 cents per mile for all tires, truck, and trailer. That's going to add another $162 per week. And then preventative maintenance, that's a 2,500 miles at 4 cents a mile. That's $100 a week. We're going to put in a preventative maintenance plan. So in this case, if we were to do kind of the standard thing, we would have our flat fixed fees of $1,455. Now we're going to take, so if we take 3.5, so $3.50, we divide that by 6, because we're going to get 6 miles per gallon. That comes to 58 cents per mile fuel cost. We're going to times that by the daily rate of 435 miles. So that's $253 per day for fuel. And of course, times that by 5. So you got $1,268 in fuel for the week. Okay. Now we're going to do the tire fund. So that's going to be, and preventative maintenance. We're just going to combine them together at 10.5 cents per mile. So in this case, because we're doing 435 miles per day times 5, that's 1,275 miles per week. And times that by 10.5 cents. I didn't do it right in my thing, but 10.5 cents. That's going to be $228 for tires and preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance. Okay. Local trucking cash flows. So we've got our fixed cost, we've got our variable cost plus fuel at that. So we've got our daily rate of incoming money at $1,209 per day. Times that by 5. In this case, I know we can do it 5 days a week. That gives you a total for this truck, day cab with a tri-axle trailer, of $6,045 per week. Now we know we've got our fixed costs of $1,455. We've got a fuel cost of $1,268. We've got a preventative maintenance fund plus tires at $228. So we got minus $1,252 off that $6,000 45. So now we're left with $3,093 at the end of the day. So we've accounted for our fixed stuff, payments on the vehicle, our back office staff, our insurance, our authority, our tires, our preventative maintenance, and a little bit of a slush fund for driver supplies. Now, we didn't put in a big catastrophic maintenance fund in this calculation because my intention is to buy day cabs, late model, that we can run for 3 years without any major issues, and then before we wear them out, we can sell them to local farmers who aren't going to put that many miles on, and then it should be a pretty solid truck for them. So in this case, we've got $3,093 to play with. In this calculation, I figured this round will take a total of 11 hours per day for the driver. So if you take 11 hours, and we're going to have overtime after 40 or after 8, you're going to have 8 hours at a standard pay rate. And then you're going to have 3 hours of overtime. So now let's figure out how much we can pay. Now, I have to make money because I got to pay for all this stuff. And in order to grow and do all that, we have to be profitable. But I really enjoy creating jobs, so I'm going to figure out what's the max I can pay while still maintaining profitability, and then I'll work back from there to make it so it works for a pay scale. So I want to make $200 per day per truck, ideally. So in a perfect world, that still leaves me $2,093 per week that I can pay an employee to run this. Now, we pay 100% on W-2, so you have to account for FICA, Medicare, your work comp, your unemployment insurance, all that other stuff. For us, that comes up to 25.5% of their wages has to be kept in withholdings. So if I take $2,093, because that's what I have to pay an employee in this cash flow, I times that by 1.255. No, sorry, it's going to be divided by 1.255. That means that I have, after withholdings, I can pay $1,667 per week to that driver after withholdings. So now I need to account for the fact that this route should take roughly 11 hours per day, 5 days a week. It's going to be 55 hours a week that it's going to take. So if I take 55, but I'm doing time and a half after 40, so I'm going to take that last 15 and I'm going to add 7.5, because that's the time and a half equation. That's 62.5 hours that I'm going to have to pay this employee. So I can do 1,667 divided by my 62.5 means that the max I can pay while still maintaining my profit margin that I would like is $26.68 an hour. That's the max I can pay while still maintaining that $200 a day in profitability. Now, I know that $26.68 would be a competitive wage. However, I know if you give somebody a wage and you don't ever have an opportunity to give them raises, it makes them not necessarily want the job and hard to manage. So my max pay is going to be $26.68 per hour in this case. Now the pay scale that I kind of have in my head doesn't necessarily fit there. We're going to go up to 30 bucks an hour. At 30 bucks an hour, I'm probably not going to make much money on this lane. I might break even, but That's going to be after I've had an employee for 2.5 years working for me, that they reach the top of the pay scale. By then they should have everything down pat. They shouldn't screw anything up. I shouldn't have any major repairs out of, unfortunately, stupidity. So at that point, I'm kind of fine just breaking even on that. Because even when you're breaking even, you're still making money because you're paying down principal on equipment. Because in this case, all the equipment is financed. So if you can break even every week, you're still doing good. You're still positive as far as net worth. However, if you're just breaking even, that doesn't give you any room to expand, or it doesn't give you the extra capital you might need if something catastrophic was to happen. So breaking even shouldn't be your target, but in the case like this, where after 2.5 years, if you're breaking even, I'd still make about $500 a week, so $100 a day rather than $200. So it'd still be profitable, but you know, if half of your stuff is breaking even and half of your stuff is making profit, you're still making a pretty decent profit. So now we need to look at the individual aspects. So breaking that all down, I can pay a driver $26.68 an hour at the top end to still maintain a $200 profit per day, or a $1,000 profit to me on this unit each and every week, which I think is pretty normal. I mean, that's like a 13% profit margin. That's actually a little better, actually. Maybe we don't need to quite be that high. We'll figure it out. But like I say, you gotta give these guys something they can work up to, and gals. So now that we've kind of broke down the fact that this lane can indeed be profitable, let's look at some of the individual factors one at a time to see what we have to do. Let's look at a driver. So in my previous case, we could do $26.68 an hour max with the withholdings to still make our goals as far as revenue. I think my pay scale is going to start them at $24 an hour. Every 6 months we'll have a review, and we'll probably go up to $30 an hour. Now, I have called around to some of my other fellow fleet owners. I've paid attention to the job postings online and everything else, and within our region and our area, $24 an hour to $30 an hour for local truck driver jobs, especially when it's just 2 loads a day. It's not doing, delivery with ramps and all that good stuff, is right in the money. However, there's some places that are starting guys a little lower, $22 an hour, but with full benefits. Now, we only pay on W-2 and we give guys 10 paid vacation days a year. That's it. That's where our benefits stop. We've always thought as a company we can pay them as much as we can, and then they can go out and make those decisions on, for example, healthcare, retirement. They can do that on their own. They have the full freedom to do it. We've also found within the state of Minnesota, MNsure, which is the state exchange system through the Affordable Care Act, let's keep the politics out of this, is generally cheaper than what I can do for the employees through us. So I would rather just pay them the money, let them go get their own plan through MNsure, and then not have to worry about it. Now, benefits generally are for people that actually think ahead. And the people that think ahead are probably going to be the employees that you're going to want to keep long term and that will actually stay long term. The ones that don't really care potentially could just be job bouncers that move from job to job because they're not thinking ahead. They don't plan 3 steps ahead. They plan, oh look, shiny thing. So, just something to think about. So we covered the employee side now. Now let's move to trucks. Trucks. Okay. As previously discussed within this whole grandiose idea, our target miles per gallon is 6 miles per gallon while grossing 90 to 99,000 pounds pulling a hopper or a belt trailer. So we're going to want to get something that probably has enough oomph, enough horsepower to pull that load effectively. If you don't have enough horsepower, then you're constantly revving it out, and they generally don't get very good fuel economy because you're always got your foot in it. So you want at least enough horsepower to get yourself moving. Now, I am looking at primarily Volvo and Mack products because I have experience with those motors and know that that D13 with that I-shift behind it is still a 1,000,000-mile motor, whereas a lot of the other motors aren't. You know, the Cummins, that's a 500, 600,000 mile motor in my experience. You know, Packar's a 2,000 mile motor. Ugh. I don't have that much experience with Detroit's. So, from my point of view, I'm kind of gravitating towards those Volvos and those Macks with the D13. I want 500 horsepower, 1850 torque, and a 12-speed I-shift behind it. So we know these drivers are going to be primarily on 2-lane, 60-mile-an-hour roads with occasionally getting on 65-mile-an-hour 4 lanes. So we're not looking for something that can cruise comfortably at 72 miles an hour all day and get good fuel economy. So that allows us to choose a rear end ratio that might have a little higher RPMs, but be more suited towards that 60 to 65 mile an hour range than the 70 mile an hour plus. Now, I don't know for sure, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go to that bastion of knowledge where everybody is 100% honest and truthful, nobody's boastful with their own motives. The Book of Faces. I'm gonna find myself a Facebook group to ask. In this case, I asked, there's a 9+ mile per gallon Facebook group. Obviously, we're not going to get 9 miles to the gallon. However, the Volvo Mack world is very popular with the people that are looking to get the highest fuel economy. So there's a lot of knowledge within that Facebook group as to what rear ends would potentially give me the best combination of power and fuel economy within the specific role that I'm doing. Now, if you were trying to go through this process and spec out trucks and choose what truck you want for a lane, a reoccurring lane like this with a day cab, it's important to take into account how fast is the truck going to be going, what is it pulling, if it's going to be pulling a dry van or something tall, maybe get the fairings on it, and how much weight. If it's going to be pulling lightweight all the time, and just your regular dry van at 70 miles an hour, you probably would want a different rear end than someone like me looking to go 60 to 65 miles an hour at 99,000 gross. So something to think about while you're looking at used trucks. You should probably narrow in what rear end you think you'll want and then try to search for that. Because if you end up getting the wrong rear end, it could either A, be a complete pooch, and that's going to cause driver turnover and fatigue because they ain't going to be able to get anywhere, even if they're paid by the hour, or you're going to get one that is geared in such a way that your RPMs are too high. You might have all the pulling power, but then you don't get the fuel economy. So figuring that out prior will help you make your choice on what used truck to buy. But this also goes towards if you're going to order new trucks, then you need to kind of have an idea and play with it to make sure that you're getting the right package for your application. Now let's talk trailers. In this case, I know that one of the products we're going to be hauling is DDGs. So what I do is I go online and I figure out what is the average density per cubic foot of DDGs. In this case, the general consensus online is around 35 pounds per square foot for a load of DDGs. So then I will take that, I know that I will have 62,000 pounds in the box normally, with potential for 70,000 pounds during the winter weight increases up here in Minnesota. Now, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to spec it so that water level, so there's two measurements on a hopper. There's water level and there's heaped 9 inches. So I want to make sure that the water level is sufficient for just my regular everyday load, and then that the heaped volume is sufficient for once we have the winter overweights. Now you can just go taller. However, it adds cost, it adds weight, and more importantly, in this case, when I intend to be pulling them with day cabs, it adds wind resistance above the cab. So I kind of want to get the lowest hopper possible that still has the cubic the cubic area required to pull the loads that I'm looking for. So in this case, at 35 pounds per foot squared, and we know that at the Mack or at the regular, we're going to be at 62,000 pounds. So 62,000 pounds, we're going to divide that by 35 pounds per square. I need 1,771 cubic feet. That's FT3, by the way. Went to college. So water level, you're at 177. So let's do 70,000, because that would be our winter overweight. 70,000 divided by 35. So that's 2,000 foot squared to do 70,000. So in this example, utilizing the Minnesota weight laws, we're going on 6 axles, which allows us to gross 90,000 pounds year round. And then we get a 10% winter increase to go to 99,000 gross, which would put you at that 70,000. However, within the state of Minnesota, you can go to 7 axles and go to 99,000, which would be real similar to the 70,000 load during the winter weight increases. Now, 99,000, you also can get a winter weight increase within the state of Minnesota to add that extra 10% during the really cold winter months when the roads are more robust. I don't know as if I really need to plan for that. So I have gotten quotes on trailers from multiple trailer manufacturers. Now, I know that I want 3 vibrators per tub for our use with DDGs. I know that I want super single tires. We're having great luck with them, great fuel economy, and they're light. I love them. And I also know that these trailers will never be more than 150 miles from the house. The problem with the super singles is the potential of having a tire go low and then also ruining a rim and making a real issue if you're in the middle of nowhere. However, if we happen to be so close to home that no matter what, I can run out with my pickup and a spare and switch it out, that really helps me be more comfortable with putting those super singles on. I know I want the biggest door possible because we're hauling DDGs. In a perfect world, I would also like 22 inches of hopper clearance so that I could use them for outbound seed loads. However, I'm going to be keeping a fair share of tandem axle hoppers that would be utilized for that, because the seed loads don't get paid by the pound, they get paid by the mile. So there's not the incentive to run the multi-axles there, and a tandem axle would be just fine. So taking all that into account, I reached out to Cornhusker, who makes trailers there out of Lincoln, Nebraska. We currently run primarily Cornhusker trailers, so I reached out to them as far as a tri-axle was concerned. Now, when we're coming to this kind of stuff and looking at it, I'm gonna go with a 102-inch wide trailer. Now, 96 wide is your standard, line up perfectly with your cab. 102 inches wide gives you that extra 6 inches on both sides. Almost all van trailers and reefers are 102 inches wide, as well as flatbeds. In the hopper world, that extra going from 96 to 102 is the equivalent of adding 6 inches up to the top of the trailer. So you're able to get that top edge down by going a little wider, and since our end goal is to make sure that we have as little drag as possible, I want the top edge of that trailer as low as possible, so I'm going to go a little wider at the 102. So utilizing all these trailer companies have cubic capacities listed on their websites, or you can get them from your salesman or saleswoman maybe. And that would allow you to figure out if they're big enough for your application. So in this case, the Cornhusker, because it comes with traps that have the high clearance, it doesn't have the same cubic capacity as some of the other trailers. So the main two within the running right now are going to be Cornhusker and Timpty. So utilizing the spreadsheet from Cornhusker at 102 inches wide, now I want to be 50 feet long to make bridge. We'll talk about bridge here in a second. So at 102 inches wide at 50 feet long, if I need to have 2,000 feet at water level, 79.5 inches puts me right at 1,988 feet water level. Now I like using water level because it's a lot, you don't have to worry about lifting the tarp up and over. If you heap it, you gotta get up there, you gotta walk it down, you gotta lift the tarp over it. It is a pain. I would rather it fit nicely within the trailer to keep my drivers from having to do all this additional work and keep the trucks moving. So they would allow me to get by with a 79.5 foot sidewall, whereas Timpty, because their tubs are different and bigger doors and lower tubs, so I couldn't use them for seed, we can even go a little shorter to a 78-inch sidewall, so another 1.5 inches lower, while still meeting the cubic requirements that I need for this lane. Now going up doesn't add that much weight. So if you think you might need that additional capacity down the road, adding that extra 6 inches to the height doesn't add much in weight. And if you're running a mid-roof truck, then an 84-inch sidewall lines up about perfect with the top of the cab. However, day cabs are not mid-roofs, and since that's the application I'm going to use it on, I'm thinking I'm probably going to go as short as possible while still getting the cubic capacity I need so that we get better fuel economy and potential little weight savings, but the weight savings are relatively negligible on the total height if you're just going a couple inches. Once I figured that out as far as the trailers I want, then I'll have to put in an order. Now, some extra things to be cognizant of on ordering trailers: aluminum versus steel within a hopper, specifically in the subframe and the front coupler. Now, Cornhusker is all aluminum. Their front subframe, or their rear subframe and their front coupler are all aluminum on all their trailers automatically. There's no options. That's why they are extremely light. However, Timpty no longer offers an aluminum subframe in the rear of the trailer. They used to. They've gone to all steel. They found that they would have to add so much extra bracing that it would actually weigh the same as a steel and cost more. You can still get an aluminum front coupler on a Timpty, which I got specified within my quotes, so that saves some weight. Additional weight saving things you can always do. You know, get rid of the power tarp, that saves some weight. You know, a lot of these guys have, or a lot of these manufacturers have lightweight drum brakes. You know, get rid of some lifts, whatever. I talked to EBY, about their generation trailers, which look very nice and are 100% aluminum. However, they add so much bracing in the back to make up for the softness of that aluminum that they actually end up weighing more than a Timpty with a steel subframe. Now, I don't own a Timpty, so I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying these are the things that I've discovered while talking to all these different dealers about tri-axle hoppers. Now Wilson will still do a aluminum subframe and aluminum coupler. However, their weight savings isn't that much going to an aluminum subframe. However, it would be corrosion resistant at that point. Now, when you're doing a tri-axle trailer, you can get different spacings for your axles. So you can either have them equally spaced, or you can have 2 tandems up front and then a pusher axle further back to make the 10-foot 2-inch spread that's required for bridge. So you can kind of play with all that. Now, if you've got more of a closed tandem in the front with a pusher in the back, it will turn better and not scrub the tires as much. So if you're doing a lot of turning and local work, that might be a better option for you. However, if you're doing longer distance stuff, it really doesn't matter that much because you're not doing that many tight turns. A lot of information. I'm tired. I'm just making this all up, by the way. This is all just from memory. So many things. Wonder if I'm empty yet.